Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a really unique turn.
Oh, we are.
We're diving deep into this single, intensely personal source document. It reads less like typical gameplay feedback and more like, a high-stakes dramatic manifesto almost.
Yeah, it's pretty raw, isn't it? And kind of hilarious in places.
It is. It's this account of a player's struggle for independence,
Yeah.
a cry for financial, even emotional freedom against this one single overpowering character in a pretty complex game system.
We're talking about the tyranny of optimization, really, personified by the character Xiangling.
Exactly.
So our mission today, I think, is to go beyond just summarizing this document. We need to unpack it as, a detailed analysis of meta-dominance, how resources get allocated, and, importantly, the emotional and financial toll that chasing peak performance can take.
Right.
We're going to really dissect why this specific character, who's actually pretty widely available, has become such an inescapable force. Why she effectively makes other high-investment, supposedly premium options kind of obsolete.
Yeah, forces the player down one particular path. And the source material, it just paints this incredibly vivid picture of, total subjugation. The player wants roster diversity. They want to play the characters they like, but that desire just gets systematically crushed under the sheer weight of the damage calculator.
It's an explosive piece, like you said, sometimes very funny, detailing these specific, almost ridiculous demands, angling places on the player, and hilariously on her supporting characters, too.
Yeah, that part's great.
It really is a brilliant case study, though. It exposes that tension, that friction between what a player enjoys and the stark reality of mechanical necessity in these complex game economies.
It's the story of a character who demands everything.
And gives the player basically no choice but to comply. So let's maybe start with that initial conflict, the performance side of things. Okay, let's unpack this. The source immediately sets Xiangling up as this unavoidable benchmark. The core conflict is right there. The player tries to use characters who are designed for high damage, characters they might have saved for months to get.
Right, the ones you expect to be the powerhouse.
Exactly. Yet, Xiangling consistently, and the text suggests almost humiliatingly, surpasses them in actual damage output. And that's where the whole structural problem really starts.
Yeah, and what's fascinating, I think, is the psychological warfare that's embedded in these comparisons.
Yeah.
It's not just about beating the game's challenges. The player's trying to validate their investment, right? Their time, their resources, maybe even real money spent on these other characters.
They should be the stars.
They should. They're designed to be the pinnacle of damage in their specific niche. But the math just doesn't agree, and Xiangling becomes this anchor dragging down every other potential roster choice. The document gives us some really specific comparison points that illustrate this vicious cycle perfectly. Let's start with Diluc.
Okay, Diluc. The classic 5-star pyro damage dealer. Yeah, the intended one, you could say. Designed to be out on the field, big claymore, satisfying hits, high impact. Yet the source just states it flatly, my Xiangling deals more damage. And the implication there is just massive. Diluc isn't cheap to build. He needs field time. He needs a good weapon, good artifacts, specific team members to really hit his potential.
Right.
So when a character you can get for free, essentially, who does most of her damage while she's off the field, when she consistently beats that expensive, high-rarity option, the whole in-game hierarchy just sort of collapses, doesn't it?
It completely undermines the premise. Why
Yeah.
go down the riskier, more expensive path if the accessible one gives you better results?
Precisely. And that frustration, you see it escalate when the player looks at Yoimiya.
Yoimiya, completely different damage philosophy, right? Rapid single-target bow attacks.
Yeah, very different. She needs shields, specific timing, so her attack sequence isn't broken. She is a dedicated on-field DPS.
But again, the source notes, Xiangling still wins the damage comparison.
Then this moves it beyond just raw attack power, I think. Yoimiya suffers from what's known as standard internal cooldown limitations, or ICD.
Okay, ICD, we should probably explain that a bit.
Yeah, we'll get deeper into it later, but basically it restricts how often her rapid hits can actually trigger the big elemental reactions, like vaporize. Xiangling, on the other hand, her main damage source is built differently. It's rotational, it hits multiple targets, and crucially, it kind of bypasses those standard ICD limitations.
Ah, okay.
So the fact that the dedicated, fast-hitting, single-target specialist is still often inferior, it shows the issue isn't just about how fast you hit. It's about the quality and, more importantly, the frequency of those elemental reaction applications.
But here's where, for me, the structural breakdown becomes just undeniable. The comparison to Hu Tao.
Right. Hu Tao, the high-risk, high-reward specialist.
Absolutely. She demands total player focus. You're playing at low health, managing stamina, executing these complex attack cancels and rotations. She is marketed, designed, everything to be the absolute peak of single-target pyro damage.
The ultimate glass cannon, basically.
Yeah, and yet the player claims, I try to play Hu Tao. My Xiangling deals more damage.
And that claim, I mean, that's a fundamental challenge to the game's entire design philosophy. If a character built around maximizing risk for maximum reward, the ultimate high-ceiling specialist is still getting beaten by the widely available off-field alternative.
Then something's really skewed in the mechanics.
It really suggests that Xiangling's output is just so fundamentally efficient and maybe even safer to execute consistently that the whole high-risk, high-investment penalty that comes with characters like Hu Tao, well, it stops being justifiable purely based on the damage numbers you get out.
So, okay, let's connect this back for the listener. What does this actually mean for roster diversity? If you're playing this game, what's the takeaway here?
Well, if you look at the bigger picture, this kind of meta-dominance creates a really severe bottleneck in how you build teams. When the game's mechanics allow a character who's easy to get, who doesn't even need to be on the field most of the time to do huge damage, when she functionally outperforms characters designed for very specific high-investment roles, the game effectively stops being about real choice. It becomes about necessity. Why would you spend your limited resources, your time, farming artifacts, your primogems, for pulling maybe even real money on 4 different specialized damage dealers?
If the best result always runs through the same 4-star character anyway.
Exactly. The optimal path always seems to lead back to her.
It really becomes, like the title says, a tyranny of optimization. You look at your limited resources, you look at the math, and it just forces your hand away from who you want to play.
Yeah, that desire for variety, for trying new things, it just gets sacrificed on the altar of optimal performance. The math dictates the meta, and in this case, the meta absolutely demands Xiangling.
And the source really hammers this home with the whole necessity of inclusion part. Even when the player tries to pivot, tries to use other popular high-value 5-star characters, Xiangling still remains essential.
Yeah, it shows her influence isn't just as a standalone damage dealer, it's across the entire system.
Exactly. The player mentions wanting to run Klee, right? High energy, catalyst user, lots of explosions.
Fun character.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the source reveals Klee's best team has Xiangling. Then they try to pivot to Raiden Shogun and Archon. Super powerful, designed for energy generation.
You'd think Raiden would enable lots of different teams.
You would. But the source notes that Raiden, and also the Hydro character Child, they both basically demand Xiangling's presence to be optimal.
And this really illustrates what you could call the synergy tax. These powerful, high-rarity characters that the player spent a fortune, or at least a lot of time, getting. They're not just enabled by Xiangling. In many cases, they become essential partners in enabling Xiangling's own damage.
She's not the support, she's the destination.
That's a great way to put it. Characters like Child provide the fast hydro application she needs for Vaporize. Raiden provides the massive energy recharge needed to fuel Xiangling's expensive ultimate ability, her Pyronado. The premium characters end up feeding resources to her. She defines the optimal flow.
It's this unwanted partnership, almost. She doesn't just enable the best strategy. She dictates the terms. The player is forced into this state of meta-compulsion. You have to include her, even if you desperately want to try something else.
The road to maximum efficiency just runs straight and seemingly inescapably through her.
So it raises that question for you, the listener, right? When the optimal answer is so dominant and maybe relatively easy to acquire, do you still have real agency in building your team?
Or are you just playing the character the developers, maybe inadvertently, designed to be the only truly competitive option? The source material definitely suggests a very frustrated no.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit from pure performance to the burden on the player, we need to focus on the sacrifices this player makes. And they're described as extensive, highly personal sacrifices just to appease this one character.
Yeah, it's not enough that she just performs well. The source makes it clear she demands constant, dedicated, and often pretty tedious service from the player.
And this is where that emotional narrative really elevates the source beyond just, game mechanics talk. The document describes these demands almost like rituals of service. They require active labor, not just spending resources. The player literally says, I fish for her. I cook for her.
Let's break that down. I fish for her. That's not just flavor text.
No, not at all. It refers specifically to getting the weapon called the catch. It's a really good polearm, especially for free-to-play players, but you get it only by spending hours, and I mean hours, fishing in specific spots across the entire game world.
Catching specific, sometimes rare, fish, then trading them in. It's incredibly tedious.
It's totally non-combat. It costs the player actual real-world time, a significant chunk of it, potentially.
And cooking for her. That means gathering ingredients, maybe farming monster drops or picking plants, and then spending those resources to make food buffs, temporary boosts to attack, or critical rate, whatever's needed to hit those peak damage numbers in a specific fight.
These are real-time, granular investments. It's the player's actual time and effort, their in-game inventory, all being funneled into improving this one character's already dominant performance.
It really frames it as service, not cooperation. It's labor.
And yet, this initial high commitment, spending all that time fishing for the catch, that turns out to be just the baseline. The source reveals this turning point, this escalation of demands when the player tries to make a premium investment.
Yes, this is a key moment. The player tries to essentially buy their way out of the continuous grind, maybe reach that next tier of optimization faster. They pull for the premium 5-star weapon engulfing lightning.
Which is specifically designed for characters like her, right? Converts energy recharge, ER, into attack. Perfect for characters who rely heavily on their ultimate ability, which Xiangling absolutely does.
It's a huge commitment. It costs a lot of primogens, which might mean real money or months of saving, a massive resource investment.
And then in this moment of, true narrative drama, the character rejects it. What's the logic there? Why reject such a powerful, synergistic weapon?
The rejection is explicit in the text, and it requires understanding stat balancing pretty well. Xiangling apparently tells the player, I don't need this much ER.
I don't need this much ER.
That's a crucial line. Energy recharge is vital for her, yes, but the player, through investing in that weapon and likely having optimized artifacts already, like the Emblem of Severed Fate set, they've probably hit or even exceeded her effective energy requirement.
So there's a point of diminishing returns.
Exactly. Every single stat point dedicated to ER beyond what she actually needs to get her ultimate back reliably is, from an optimization perspective, inefficient. Why? Because that stat slot, whether on the weapon or artifacts, could have been used for something else. Critical rate, critical damage, elemental mastery. Stats that push her damage ceiling higher.
She's demanding peak efficiency, not just saturation of a needed stat. It's like the character herself is aware of her ideal build parameters and just rejects anything outside that perfect calculation.
It's not about getting more utility if that utility is redundant. It's purely about maximizing the damage ceiling. Engulfing lightning provides utility the player, having already optimized the rest of her kit, simply doesn't need anymore.
Wow. Okay. So the rejection forces the player back to the drawing board, and then she demands a shift in tactics.
Yeah, the character issues a direct command, basically, that changes how the player has to approach combat. Give me more field time. Even though she's primarily considered an off-field sub-DPS character. Right. But demanding field time could be about optimizing energy particle absorption, maybe ensuring the initial hits of her Pyronauto connect perfectly, or something else specific to maximizing output in certain scenarios. Whatever the reason, it forces the player to completely adapt their strategy around her needs. It takes valuable on-field time away from other characters who might need it.
It's relentless.
Yeah.
And this pursuit of the absolute damage ceiling, it culminates in the ultimate financial requirement, doesn't it? I can deal more damage with Homa.
Staff of Homa. Another distinct, extremely high-cost, premium 5-star weapon.
And unlike engulfing lightning, Homa provides, high base attack and a ton of crit damage.
Exactly. Stats that directly address that damage ceiling problem without adding the now unnecessary ER. It's the next logical step if pure damage maximization is the only goal.
So this just signifies her insatiable demands. Even a top-tier, optimized 5-star weapon like engulfing lightning isn't good enough unless it provides the specific kind of damage increase needed to push her limits even further.
The cost, the time investment, the complexity of getting it, none of that matters to the character's logic in this narrative, only the output. The pursuit of the absolute optimal meta build translates directly from an in-game stat priority into a potentially very high real-world financial cost for the player.
It's that moment you realize the optimization loop isn't just time-consuming. It could actually be financially ruinous if you try to meet the character's highest, most uncompromising standards.
A sobering thought. Okay, so now we transition from those financial demands to the technical mechanics that actually secure her dominance. This is where we really dig into how this tyranny is maintained, and it starts, according to the source, with her total control over Bennett.
Ah, Bennett, the ubiquitous support figure in so many top teams, especially Xiangling's.
He's practically glued to her in the meta. And this section details resource extraction through what the source calls the funneling mandate. The character commands, "You just need to funnel me more." Okay, for listeners who might be newer to this game's specific tactics, what exactly does funneling mean here? Funneling is a very precise tactical maneuver designed for high efficiency. Bennett's elemental skill, when he uses it, generates pyro energy particles. Zhangling's ultimate ability, the Pyronado, has this extremely high energy, cost 80 energy, one of the highest in the game.
Right, it needs a lot of juice.
A lot. So Bennett is tasked with generating those particles. But crucially, funneling means the player has to very quickly switch from Bennett right after he uses his skill to Xiangling, so that she is the active character on the field to physically absorb those particles flying through the air.
Ah, so she catches the energy directly.
Exactly. This charges her Pyronado much, much faster than she could ever charge it on her own just by being off-field. It's the complete systemic subordination of Bennett's role purely to service Xiangling's energy needs. It's not just a polite request for energy then. And the source describes this relationship escalating to a really dramatic, almost disturbing image. She grabs Bennett and forces him to throw himself off enemies. Yeah, that's the ultimate dramatic metaphor for what we call sacrificial mechanics in optimal play. It's about maximizing energy generation, even if it puts the support unit at risk.
How so?
While in the highest levels of play, Bennett is often equipped with a weapon like the Sacrificial Sword. This weapon has a chance to instantly reset the cooldown of his elemental skill, letting him use it twice in very quick succession.
Okay, double the particles.
Potentially, yes. So when the source says Bennett is forced to throw himself off enemies, it's illustrating that frantic, repeated use of his skill, maybe using it twice quickly, swapping immediately to Xiangling to catch the particles, maybe even getting knocked around or taking damage himself in the process because he's staying out just long enough to execute this maneuver perfectly.
All just to generate those crucial pyro particles for Xiangling's ultimate.
His personal risk, his on-field vulnerability, becomes the price of keeping her Pyronado spinning constantly. It's relentless exploitation of the support unit, all designed to shave milliseconds off the team's rotation time.
The entire system, her optimal setup, is built on this exploitation, which leads us directly back to that financial crisis point. The player has been pushed to the absolute edge. They need the staff of Homa for that final damage spike she demands, but it remains unattainable. The player states it plainly. I can't pull for Homa, I don't have enough primogems. And primogems, as we said, the premium currency. Hard to get without paying or saving for a very long time.
Right. This shortage isn't accidental within the narrative. It signifies that the player has likely exhausted all their earned free-to-play resources. Maybe on previous banners trying to get other characters, maybe even on that rejected engulfing lightning. The demands of the optimal character, Xiangling, have simply exceeded the player's capacity for investment derived purely from playing the game.
And the source captures this moment of critical real-world failure with just incredible dramatic flair. In her mechanical pursuit of dominance, the character literally grabs the player's credit card and it declines.
That moment is the narrative climax, isn't it? It's where the digital demands of the game's optimization engine collide catastrophically with the player's actual real-world financial limits.
Yeah.
The character's need for that mathematically superior damage profile embodied by Homa has exceeded the player's ability or perhaps willingness to pay the real-world cost. That declining credit card is the abrupt, non-negotiable wall that the tyranny of optimization finally slams into.
It's the realization that reaching that absolute top tier isn't just about skill or grinding time anymore. It's about capital expenditure that, frankly, not everyone can or wants to sustain.
A harsh reality check. So the player's out of resources, out of options. Defeated, really, by the character's insatiable appetite for power. The final scene then sets up the inescapable technical truth behind it all. The character issues her final judgment. Guess this is the end. And then deploys her companion. She grabs Gooba and she says, Gooba, get them. And this brings us right to the crucial technical apex, the core mechanical fact that truly defines her overpowered state. Gooba's deployment, alongside the Pyronado, which is presumably already active or about to be, is the manifestation of her core advantage. The source describes it chillingly as pure, no eyeside pyro application.
Okay. We touched on ICD earlier, but this needs the full deep dive treatment now. What is ICD and why is the lack of it so game-breaking for Xiangling?
Right. So ICD stands for internal cooldown. For almost every character's attacks, normal attacks, skills, bursts, when they apply an element like pyro or hydro to an enemy, there's a tiny, hidden cooldown timer. It restricts how quickly they can apply that same element again to trigger a reaction.
That's like limiter built into the system.
Exactly. It's usually governed by a rule like, you can apply the element only once every 3 hits, or only once every 2.5 seconds, whichever comes first. This standard restriction exists specifically to control the frequency of elemental reactions, especially the big ones, like vaporize or melt.
And vaporize is key because it multiplies the damage significantly, right?
Massively. When you hit an enemy affected by hydro with pyro, you trigger vaporize. Depending on which element triggers it, you get either a 1.5x or a 2x damage multiplier on that hit. The entire high-end meta, the speedrunning community, it's all built around triggering reactions like vaporize as often as humanly possible.
So if characters didn't have ICD,
They could trigger reactions constantly. With every single hit, the damage numbers would be astronomical, and it would completely break the game's difficulty curve. That's why ICD exists for almost everyone.
okay, so the key mechanical insight here, the reason Xiangling is so dominant, according to this source and well, general consensus, is that her spinning Pyronado ultimate ability, and maybe to a lesser extent Gooba's flame breath, they operate outside these standard ICD rules.
That's exactly it. The vast majority of the individual hits from her Pyronado have no internal cooldown on their pyro application. This is the crucial, almost hidden mechanical anomaly.
It's a loophole.
Essentially, yes. It allows her, especially when paired with someone applying hydro very quickly, like Child, or even characters like Ayato or Kokomi, it allows her to apply pyro and trigger those high multiplier vaporize reactions continuously, at a speed that basically no other pyro character can match because they are bound by standard ICD.
So instead of getting maybe one vaporize hit every 2.5 seconds, she's potentially getting it with almost every single swing of her spinning Pyronado.
Pretty much. And because Pyronado hits multiple times per second and can hit multiple enemies, the total damage output becomes exponential. It completely overrides the standard rules of elemental application balance. And it negates the need for the high investment or risky playstyles of other specialized damage dealers who do follow the rules.
It's this one mechanical detail that turns a relatively accessible character into an absolute meta-defining weapon. It's a form of efficiency that's just unachievable for characters playing by the standard ICD book.
And that final image in the source, it captures the cold, almost unfeeling nature of this raw power. It's divorced from personality, from compromise. Gooba's eyes, as he's deployed, show no hint of sadness. Nothing but pure, no-iced pyro application.
It's chilling. The optimization loop is just cold, ruthless, efficient. The only thing that matters is the calculated, unavoidable damage output dictated by exploiting this specific mechanical anomaly.
The character in this narrative becomes an avatar of pure, uncompromising utility, driven by the math. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, that was quite an intensive journey we just took.
It really was.
We started this deep dive looking at a player's desire for just, some variety in their team.
Yeah.
And we ended up completely trapped in this technical and even financial optimization loop,
Yeah.
all defined by one very demanding, extremely powerful character.
Yeah.
That source document, despite its dramatic flair, maybe because of it, it gave us a really fascinating look at the kind of real-world pressure that could be generated by these subtle or maybe not so subtle in-game mechanical imbalances.
What we've really witnessed here, dissected through this source, is the complete surrender of player agency to raw mechanical efficiency. Xiangling's dominance, as portrayed, wasn't based on her being flashy or the most expensive character or the highest rarity.
Yeah.
It was based entirely on exploiting a specific, deep-seated mechanical advantage, that lack of standard ICD on her pyro application.
That one technical feature, that loophole, it ends up defining an entire competitive meta. It renders massive effort, time, and premium resources invested in alternatives like Diluc or Yoimiya or Hu Tao almost irrelevant if pure optimal output is the goal.
It's a powerful testament to the fact that often efficiency just beats flavor, doesn't it?
It seems so.
So the key takeaway here for you, the listener, I think, is understanding that the most effective tool within any complex system, whether that's a video game, a financial market, a workflow strategy, whatever, it's often not the most obvious one. It's not always the most advertised or the most expensive.
Right?
Sometimes it's the one that finds and exploits a hidden efficiency, maybe even a loophole, in the system's core rules. The tyranny we analyzed today was born directly from that kind of mechanical advantage and the mathematical inevitability that followed. And the source leaves us with that final kind of haunting sentiment, what a cruel world. Which really sums up that realization, doesn't it? That maximizing efficiency sometimes requires sacrificing joy, sacrificing agency, and sometimes apparently dipping into your emergency funds and still coming up short.
Yeah.
It really does raise a fundamental question, though, and it applies far beyond just video games. It's something maybe worth considering for all of us.
What's that?
When does the pursuit of absolute optimization, whether it's in a game, in your career, and how you manage your time, anything, when does it stop being fun or productive and just become this mandatory, maybe emotionally or financially draining job? When does it start forcing you into decisions you actively dislike? And if you reach that point, what have you truly gained from all that efficiency?
That's a heavy thought to end on. Something to definitely think about the next time the optimal solution feels like the one you least want to choose.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.